Welcome to Love Light, the only podcast dedicated to bright, fine art photography. Hosted by Sarah Jane Ethan, Love Light is here to celebrate all things bright, pretty and pastel. At Love Light, white is the new black and beauty is in the detail. This is your place to relax, a place to belong, a place to be inspired and connect with like-minded colleagues who share your passion for light and beauty. So come and introduce yourself in the Love Light Facebook group and subscribe to the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram for your weekly dose of inspiration and connect with bright, fine art photographers from around the world.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Love Light podcast. Today, I'm really excited about our guest. We've got Katie Lamb with us. Katie Lamb currently lives in Kansas City, although she calls Dallas, Texas home, and she is mum to twins and has a third baby on the way, which I think is probably going to be born around about the time that this episode goes live. After receiving her Bachelor of Fine Art Photography degree, she used her photography and videography to document the international orphan crisis and various other mission organizations in Africa, Asia and Europe. In 2008, she launched her photography business, specializing in weddings and families before transitioning to just families when she started one of her own. Her other passions are woodwork and DIY home projects, which she shares on Instagram and seeks to encourage other women to take back the tools and get building, which I think is fantastic. And she also has created and sells her own photography preset, which I absolutely love. And any of you who know me know that I love very soft, pastel-y images, and that is exactly what Katie's work is, and that's what her preset is. So I'm so excited to have you here, Katie. I'm so thankful that you've given us the time. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, you're so welcome. And yeah, I mean, I've mentioned already that I absolutely love your work, and we will have posted some of your work in the Love Light Facebook group and on the Instagram. So everyone has seen your work already and how dreamy and bright and sunny and happy it is. So tell us a little bit about how you got into photography, because you didn't start with weddings or families. You started with missions and international crisis photography. So that is fascinating. I'd love to hear this story.
Absolutely. So I never dreamed I would have a photography business ever. I actually have two little sisters we adopted from China. And so it was through the adoption of them that I really fell in love with photography. I was in high school, and in our high school, you got to pick a major kind of that you focus on. And so I did photography throughout, just kind of documenting my little sisters growing up, because we have about a 16-year age gap. So that's what I really found that was my passion. So I went on to college and majored in photography, again, never wanting to open my own business, and then spent a lot of time overseas in China and Western and Eastern Europe, and then Africa, just documenting all different situations, all different mission teams that were working, and loved it. And that was my heart and what I really, really loved to do. I planned to move to China. Mandarin Chinese was my minor in college. I really wanted to move there after, but it wasn't really my husband's passion.
Oh.
So, he didn't really want to move to China. So we ended up getting married, and then realized also too, like, doing nonprofit work, it doesn't pay the bills a whole lot.
Wow.
In fact, a lot of times, like, I would pay to do it, So I ended up starting my business. And at first I was like, I'm just going to make money to really just support me enough that I can be doing these things.
Yes.
And then I really started loving photographing families. But even more than that, I really loved business. And that's where my heart really was tugging towards, was just the business side of things and growing a business. And even if it wasn't photography, so I've launched so many different businesses over the years.
Yeah.
Just doing that. And so that's where I got started. It's kind of a different route than most people take, but that's how I ended up here.
That is so fascinating, because I originally trained as a nurse, and I was going to become a midwife, and I wanted to go to Africa. That was my big life's dream. And similar to you, actually, now I'm in my field now, and I absolutely love it. And it's so interesting how life just totally twists and turns, and you never what you think you want to be when you're, however old you would have been, early 20s or whatever. You never end up being that later on. Everything grows and develops. That is so fascinating. But tell me, how did you find going into mission work? So it was not for profit, and you were doing it for free, were you? And what did you learn?
Most of it.
Yes. And so what did you learn about photography in a totally different arena to what you're in now?
It was so much, obviously, documentary. I wasn't setting up poses or anything like that. Like, it was really telling stories through photographs, which is what my brand is really built around now too.
Yeah.
Of just, I want to draw out that emotion.
Yeah.
And so doing that throughout the years of the nonprofit work really, I think, helped in that.
Yes.
And also technically taught me to shoot in any lighting scenario, because if I'm like in a dark orphanage, or if I'm, outside in a village surrounded by just orange dirt and orange, huts everywhere, the lights will be reflected. So it really pushed me to just grow in any area, in any lighting situation that I was shooting in.
That is so interesting. I have noticed that about your work. It's very natural. There's a lot of movement, and you see people's personality and their connections with each other. So that definitely shows in your work. That's definitely. So is there a part of you that still pines for that kind of work? Yeah.
Yeah, life is so different for me now. Obviously, having a family and having little ones of my own, like, traveling isn't as appealing now because I'm not ready to leave them yet. But absolutely, nonprofit work is still kind of where, my true passion with the photography side of things is.
Are you still involved with nonprofit, or through other means, just distantly, remotely? What are you involved with that?
So I actually do handle all the social media for a nonprofit down in Texas.
Really? Wow.
And so their whole thing is just trying to restore hope in both the local community and then around the world. So I run all their social media for that, just to have my little plug in there and kind of keep my hand in it.
I love that. That's amazing. You've obviously just got such a big heart. That's amazing. So how did you start in weddings? So originally you went straight into weddings when you were like, okay, I just need to settle down and pay some bills now. What did that journey look like going into weddings?
Definitely. So when I got married, my husband was playing football. And so then whenever he was done playing football, came home, he decided he wanted to go to law school. So we had to move away from home. We were moving somewhere totally different. We didn't know anyone, and we really didn't want to take out a lot of loans for school.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was just like starting my business like that day, basically. Oh my God. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And my personality type, I'm an Enneagram 3, a hardcore Enneagram 3. And so if I have my mindset on something, I'm going to do it. And it doesn't matter. Like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So our goal was to really be able to, however we had to do it, graduate law school debt free. And so I knew weddings was, families, it's certainly very profitable as well. But for me, looking at it, I was like, I can get into weddings a lot faster and easier and be more profitable if I go that route first. And so we were in a brand new city. Like I said, I didn't know anyone. I did a wedding show. I don't know. I assume y'all have those too.
Yeah, we do. But describe to me what they're like in America, because they may be different than what we've got over here in Europe.
So they wouldn't be my typical ideal client at all. Like usually they're huge, and usually it's more budget brides. But it's like all the vendor. Just tons and tons. They're huge. Tons of vendors, and they walk through and just try to get information and everything like that. And so I decided to do it not because I wanted clients from it, but because I wanted to develop vendor relations from it.
Interesting.
Because I knew all the top planners were there, and wedding planners are some of the best referral source for weddings. And so I went into it for that, like just, again, total business aspect and mindset and everything I did. So although I did book some clients, there were some that could afford, because I went into it, I wanted to be a more luxury type wedding photographer. I wasn't going to undervalue myself or my services. So I did book a couple, but I made vendor relationships that carried me through. And from like that day forward, it just, snowballed into developing my business into what it was, and we did go through law school, and my husband wasn't working at all. I was able to fund us our living expenses and everything. So it was really such a blessing. And it was just out of sheer determination that I was going to do it no matter what. And it was hard years. I worked all the time.
Wow.
I was shooting so many weddings, and I was exhausted.
Wow.
But I don't regret it in any way, just because we didn't come out of law school with any debt because of that. And to me, that was worth it. I didn't have kids at the time. I could do it.
That's true. That's true. How has having kids changed your business and your career? Because that's obviously a big change that I think a lot of our listeners are facing or going through at the moment. What was that like for you when you suddenly got these two little ones? Because you had twins as well. I mean, you just jumped straight in the deep end, didn't you?
That's such a good one. Yes, I do. I dove right in. It was a huge transition, and one, fortunately, I was prepared for. I'd always been around kids. Obviously, I have sisters that I was a second mom to and helped raise since our age gap was big. So I knew what to expect of having little ones around. So I planned accordingly. So that's why about 6 months before I started transitioning out of weddings. But for like just little examples, like before pre-kids, when I would do photo shoots, it was okay, I'll travel, and Houston is one of our country's biggest cities. And so you can drive 2.5 hours and you're still in Houston.
Wow.
It's crazy. So just because traffic, everything, it's crazy. So I would book sessions anywhere and everywhere, and it was no big deal to be in a car, right?
Right.
I didn't have childcare at home. And now, I mean, things like that, like I shoot 5 minutes within my house, period. That's it. I don't offer any other locations. So little things, my business like that had to change. And then also just making sure I was so streamlined in everything I did. Like I want my business to be a well-oiled machine that it can basically run itself. And then that's also when I really transitioned out of, not out of shooting, because I still shoot, but really followed my heart into teaching and courses and things like that. Because one, I don't have to leave my house for that, and I can spend as much time with my kids. And that was it was kind of the push to get me there, because that teaching is really what I love doing. But man, having a family changes everything, but it's totally possible and beautiful. It just, it takes some sacrifices, but most importantly, it takes changes in your business to make it work. And that's the beauty of owning your own business, because you can do those things.
That's amazing. So you're saying some of the things that you did was make sure that you limited your locations to closer to the house. Did that take a lot of what's the word? When you work, because you might feel pressured if somebody's inquiring for a further location, and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, to take that determination to go, no, I've decided close to the house. Did you have to go through that process of kind of, I can't think of the words, when you just
I
go,
know what
right,
you're saying. So for me, again, I'm so business minded that there's never a struggle to be like, nope, sorry, this is my policy. And if you're up for it, but at that point, my brand had been so established that no one ever wanted their own look. They came to me saying, I want these photos.
Right.
I'll go anywhere. You pick the clothes, like just make it look like these photos, So I do think if I had done that in the beginning, when I was really establishing myself, my brand, I probably would have gotten pushback of, well, I really want to shoot at my parents' farm or something like that. But since I did it so, after my brand was established, people came and they're like, I don't care. Like, I trust you. I'll do anything you want me to do. So no one ever questioned it. They're like, okay, just tell me where we're going to shoot and I'll be there.
I love that. And I think that your work to me stands out because you've got this very soft pastel feel to the pictures. And I've gone very similar myself, just naturally, because it's what I like. And I've noticed that I have people banging on my door just wanting what I do. And I think it's the scary thing, but also the strength of just being true to your own creative style and not trying to just copy other people who are already being successful. A lot of photography looks very similar, and then we land on Katie Lamb's Instagram and it's totally just bright and soft and sunny, and so I can see why people were just like, no, I just want that, like just make me look like that. But that takes a lot of creative confidence to go, no, this is what I like. Has that been a journey for you? Have you ever doubted your instincts, your creative instincts, or have you always just been like, nope, this is what I like, take it or leave it, I don't really care?
Sometimes I wish I could say that I was
right?
struggle, but honestly, I've learned, I don't know if you're into the Enneagram, but I've learned about my personality type. I don't struggle as much as that. It was just, this is what I'm going to do. If you like I want to repel people. I want it to be a very strong attraction or repel. Like when people come to my portfolio, my Instagram, I either want them to hate it and they don't want anything to do with it, or they love it. I want people on fire for my work and for my brand. and, not that in between. So
Yeah.
I really I was not, obviously, let's be clear. The first several years, my work did not look like it does today.
Right.
Obviously, like, it's a growing process. And I was trained in film. Digital wasn't really a thing yet when I was in college, so I was
Great.
100% film based. And
Wow.
so transitioning that over to digital,
Mm.
kind of was a journey, but I just kept pushing and trying new things and trying to refine the style. I never tried to replicate anyone else really, because I knew that it doesn't really get you
Mm.
anywhere. Like, you really need to have, because once you're secure in your brand and your style, you're not going to really question it as much, and you're not going to be diverted as easily. Like, that's how you get such a streamlined
Yeah.
brand and style, is just by just doing what you're passionate about, what makes you happy. And it may not be for everybody. My work is definitely not for everybody, and that's
Mm.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't need to attract everybody. I just need to attract the few I need to make my required income.
Yeah.
So
I love that, and that is such a healthy attitude, but one that's quite difficult to get to. Where
yeah,
exactly like you said, that you're happy to polarize opinions with your work. Some people will love it, some people will hate it, and that's okay, because the people who love it really love it, and they
yeah,
become what they call the brand ambassadors. They're the ones that
yeah,
the brand evangelists. They're excited about your work because it's different. That's definitely what I've noticed in my business too. So yeah, that's definitely true. And so when you said that you transitioned from film into digital, so talk us through that, because a lot of people transition from digital into film, but you've gone the other way. So what took you down the route of going digital rather than continuing to shoot film, seeing as you knew how to do it and had a film camera and
yeah. That's a great question. And what I get asked a lot, and it all comes back to, again, I'm so business minded. Like, I know most photographers and artists, just the type of brain we use, we're usually guided and pulled more by our creative side. And
Mhm.
in business, that can be a really a big challenge. But for me, I'm much more business focused, and so I knew. And not saying that film isn't a great business, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
But the type of business I wanted to run, I
Yeah.
knew they're just I didn't want one, I don't want to deal with anxiety of if something happened to the negatives when they're being shipped off. I
Oh
don't want anything out
gosh.
of my hands ever.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
so that was a big part of it. But then also, like, for me, streamlining a workflow has always been
Mhm.
important. Like, I need to be able to crank out things really quickly,
Yeah.
and I don't want to have to wait on other people to do, what a step in my process.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted digital was just a lot faster. Really, what
Yeah.
is what it came down to. It was just faster. It was easier. So that's really why I kind of decided, okay, I love film and I love seeing film photographers and their
Yeah.
work. I mean, it's gorgeous. But I also knew if you're going down the film route, it has to be more because it's something you're so passionate about, because the
Yeah.
average person has no idea. Like, most people think I shoot
Yeah.
film, and I don't. And so it really shows, like, the average client, unless you're pursuing photographers as
Yeah.
your client, they have no idea if it's film or digital, and they really don't care.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing it, it more has to be, I think, internal. Like, it's just something that you're really passionate about doing, and you want to put in the extra steps and extra work
Yeah.
because you love it. And to me, I just didn't love it that much to trump me just being able to be just more productive in my personal business.
Oh, that makes total sense. I think you and I are very similar people, because my brain works in exactly the same way. I love film. I've never shot film, but I love looking at it, and I like trying to replicate it in my own work. But
Yeah.
it's never quite made sense business wise for me to do film. Exactly like you said, I don't think people, I see a lot of film photographers charging more and saying, well, it's because I shoot on film. And I'm like, yeah, but what does that mean to a client? Like, what
Yeah.
to them, why is it worth the extra money when another
Yeah.
photographer may look very similar to them? Like, they need to understand,
Absolutely.
like you said, it's actually just the ones who like to be able to say my wedding was shot on film.
Yeah.
But that is quite a small niche of clients there. So,
It is. It is. You're definitely pursuing a smaller group, and for many it works wonderful because they can charge a lot more, and so they can
yeah.
just approach a smaller group. But it just, um, I like you said, I think it's more for either for other photographers who love it and have a passion for it, or more like just artsy people who love the idea of that it was shot, on film. So I
Yeah.
think it's just, it's personal choice for everybody's business. It just wasn't for me.
So true. I love that. And I like that it's, you know, you've made it clear that it's not the hierarchy that you shoot digital and then film and then you've made it, but actually you just need to do what works for your business. And, you know, I'm very similar to you. I do not want somebody else editing my pictures. I want to have total control of the colors and everything. I'm very fussy about most things and I just want to do it the way that looks right to me. And so you transitioning into digital, then you obviously then started to explore this concept of creating your own preset. So talk us through how that developed, because you said your work's changed over time. Was that your process of creating a preset, or did that come later, or did you use other presets first? You know, how did that work for you?
Yeah. So whenever, do you remember VSCO presets? Like when they first came out?
Yes, I use them. I use them.
Yeah. Didn't we all?
Yeah.
So when they first came out, gosh, I don't even know how many years ago that was, but I was using that and it just wasn't, well, two reasons. It wasn't the exact look I wanted. And everybody was using VSCO. And so I was like, I don't want my work to look like everybody else. So I really started challenging myself to learn the ins and outs of Lightroom, like how everything's affected. And so through the years, like developing my editing style and preset took, I've been in business 12 years. It took a long time to get there. And just constantly refining and creating my own preset. And then it became over time that people were always asking, like, will you sell it? Will you sell your preset? And I was always like, no, like I'm not selling, especially when shooting was like my whole business. You know, I was like, no, like I worked, this was years and years of work and I feel weird just giving it away. So it felt weird. But then as I transitioned more into like, I love to teach and I love to help others. I decided that I wanted to, so I created another one that I sell that's very similar to the one I use. It's just a little bit more user friendly for the average person that didn't create it themselves. And so I created that and it'll work. Like it's not for everyone because it does require, if you're using that preset, you have to shoot the exact way that I shoot. Because my preset was specifically made for the way I shoot. And I shoot in a very specific way. So if you don't shoot the same way, it's probably not going to look good. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing when people are looking for presets is that they're looking for this like one click and done thing. And that's not what a preset was intended to be. And because you still need to make adjustments, but it also, just because you take your photo and put on I can't even think of other presets, but you put on someone else's preset, all of a sudden your work isn't going to look like theirs. Because you probably didn't shoot it in the exact same way they did, which is the crucial part of it. I think that's where a lot of disappointment over presets come, and people constantly trying to buy presets and try new things. And then in reality, it's more a matter of if you buy one, you need to tweak it to how you shoot because everybody shoots different. The people that made the preset shoot totally different. So yeah, that's kind of like my little.
So true, and I remember that feeling so well from when I first started my business. You know, just this frustration of not being able to make my work look like the pictures that I saw. And we had because my husband was doing photography before I was, and he was in a totally different field. He was a much darker work and incredibly hands off and candid and documentary stylist. So we had a friend who was one of the top in the world in that particular style, and he sat us down with his computer and talked us through exactly how he edits, like every little slider he showed us, and my husband was documenting the whole thing. Could we make our pictures look like his? No. It was just, we literally sat there, we watched him do it, and we still can't make the pictures look like that. And it was, I suppose, I think quite a difficult journey for me to know, okay, I've just got to create my own thing and be confident. No, this is my thing. I love it, and I'm going to do it like this. And that was actually quite a hard journey when you want to make something that looks like something that you already love because you've already seen other pictures. You're like, I want to make it look like that. And actually, you've got to carve your own way creatively. I remember that so well.
Yes, that is such a good point. Because especially the first few years, like that's so true. You're just, what you want, the end game you want. And especially with our culture of presets and filters, like for the newer people in photography, they get it in their head that that's all it is, and that's all it
Yeah.
takes, when in reality there's so much more behind that, and the way you shoot your images will always matter 1,000 times more than the way you edit your image.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a realization you have to come to after, experimenting.
Oh, so true. I remember that as well from the from the early days when, because my husband was teaching me, and I was so frustrated because I'm taking a picture that looks like a picture I've seen, but yet it looks totally different. I'm like, and it's because there's something behind me. There's a big wall behind me or something, and I don't realize that
Yeah.
causes a shadow. And my husband kept saying it's all about light, and I was like, no, it's not. And he's like, yes, it is. And just having to learn that it is just the hard road of learning how to use light and how to use your camera, and how and you don't want to have to go through the learning process because you want to just get it all right first time. But that's not the way any of us ever learn anything. We have to just do the road, just keep experimenting, and eventually you start figuring it out, like, oh, okay, that's how it works. That's how. And so I started instinctively doing things I couldn't even put a name on. I didn't even know there was a name, and then like later on I'd see another photographer talking about it. I'm like, oh, it actually was a name. I did not know. I just I was just noticing that worked in a picture. And just for example, because the style that my husband started in, it was a totally different style. So you would put a couple flat up against a wall, but I started noticing I much preferred it if I just put them on a slight angle so the wall ran away from behind them, into the distance behind them. And I just liked that, and I didn't know there was a name for that, or that was like a technique and people did. I just knew that I liked the look of it, and so it just developed slowly like that. And you just have to be content to do that journey, I think.
Exactly. And one of my favorite quotes that you kind of remind me of talking about this is that I wish I could, like, any new photographer, like, mid-range photographer, to tell them, what is it? Don't compare your middle to someone else's end.
Wow,
And
that's
because
really
I think
good.
so many people are like, they're just a couple years in and they're like down on themselves and they're down on their work and they can't figure out why they can't make it look like this person who's been in business 15 years. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we didn't start where we are
Yeah.
either. Like, it is a journey, and your work is going to be tremendously better if you go on that journey rather than try to take shortcuts to get to the end product.
Yeah.
But yeah, that quote just always kind of stuck with me
love
when I
that.
always share with my students, because I love that so much.
That's so good. And that's actually something that was really on my heart with the Love Light community. I wanted to make sure it was a place where we could celebrate victories, even if you're just starting out, and then your work isn't where you want it to be yet, but it is further than the last shoot that you did. And you're really proud of it and you're really pleased with yourself. And just to have somewhere to be able to share it and say, I'm really pleased I've taken one more step towards where I want to go, and to not feel embarrassed that it's not your, what you see as your final product yet. It's, but you're getting closer, you're honing your style and building your confidence. So I love that.
I love that you created that, because I think that's so needed in our industry, because it is so much focused on those that are further along. And I think sometimes new people are afraid to ask the questions and to take that journey. And so I think they need that, and to have those little milestones. Like, every shoot you do should be better than your last, like, always. And so I think I love that you created that.
That's so true. Actually, that was something that stopped me being too perfectionist when I was developing my style, was accepting, okay, this is going to be a journey and I've just got to do the journey. So I used to edit a whole wedding, put it into a blog post, and then look through the blog post comparing it to a last wedding. And that's when I would go, oh, I think I've gone a bit too bright, or oh, it's a bit too dark, or maybe that's a bit green, like whatever it was. And then I would tweak it for the next wedding. And then the next wedding I would do the same thing, just trust my instincts, edit it, put it on a blog post, then compare it to another one and go, oh, okay, I think I've, and that's how, rather than sitting there for endlessly with a few pictures, just tweaking, and never getting the project out of the door and to my client.
And they're not going to notice those little tweaks anyway.
Oh my goodness. I think that was the thing. I had to keep telling myself, because I would sit there going, should I make that red a little bit more orange, a little bit more pink, a little bit more orange, a little bit more pink, and it starts sending you crazy, like, and I can't see the difference anymore. And I had to keep telling myself, my client is not going to notice. They're not going to notice if it's slightly more orange or slightly more pink. They're not going to see
exactly. It's so true.
I
Especially
love
with
that.
weddings when you're editing so many pictures.
Oh yeah. And I'm very similar to you because I ran my own business before I did photography, and so I was basing my photography income on my old business. If it doesn't make the money that my old business was making, what's the point? I'll go back to my old business. And so exactly like you, my business is streamlined to within an inch of its life. There's not a spare minute anywhere. And I managed to work 3 days a week, working full time, on my business, but just managing to, I think you become very selective about what jobs you do and what jobs you don't, and how long you spend on everything. And so I can get a whole wedding edited in 6 hours, selected and edited and retouched and out the door. But it's because I just kept training myself. Just trust my instincts. Don't overanalyze this. Just go with what feels right, what looks right to me. My client is going to be happy because it's within a margin of what they're expecting from me.
Yes.
It might be slightly this way or slightly that way, but it's within a margin that they recognize as my work.
They got them on time.
Yes.
For weddings, that's huge.
Oh yeah,
just getting to them on time.
It's absolutely, because I normally get them within 2 weeks, which is just unheard of. But it's the way I like to work. I like closure. I don't like a backlog of editing. It stresses me out. And so exactly like you, I was like, okay, this is a priority for me. I need to get my work out quickly. What do I need to do to make that happen? Because that's my priority. So, and I suppose especially when you've got little ones, that becomes even more important because you've got other people depending on you or wanting your time. And so you've just got to be strict about what you do and what you don't do and how long you spend.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. They won't give you all the time in the world to work.
No, especially when you've got 2. Oh my goodness, that is quite literally your hands full. So you said that a lot of your business now is coaching and mentoring. So what do you love to coach people in, and how do you love to help people? What kind of topics do you often cover with people in your coaching sessions?
Yes. So for mentoring now, I'm transitioning a lot of it to online courses. But for mentoring, you had 2 options. It was the shooting and editing side.
Yes.
And so that was really, people would, travel to me and we would spend several hours together actually doing it.
Right.
But then the part I really love was the business mentor sessions. And that's still something I do because that can't really be translated as much into a course when I'm digging into the depths of people's businesses. And I mean, we're going through everything in their business and how you can, just do a better job with every aspect of it and where do you struggle the most. So that's the mentor session side. And then the courses, I have several different types of courses on there, from business to photography, lots of photography ones, some fun ones, just like how to take your own self-portraits.
I love that.
I take all of my own family pictures, and there's so many ways to do that professional photographers have no idea that it even exists. So that's one of my just fun. I love that course. It's just kind of a fun thing. But then also like the business side, diversifying your income. I'm a huge believer in diversifying your income. And I think people are just now seeing, because of COVID and what we're going through now and people's businesses being shut down, they're finally hearing my words that I've been preaching for so long, is how important it is to have diversity in your income, even as photographers. Like, I know it's really easy to be like, this is all I do and all I do is shoot. But there are other ways to take your photography, take advantage of your photography skills and create other revenue streams, which only helps your business in so many ways. And especially when an emergency situation comes like this, you have other revenue streams to fall back on.
That's amazing.
So I kind of have a wide range of.
I love that. And so what kind of areas do you feel people are missing when it comes to diversifying their income with photography?
So working with brands is a huge one. And I know not everyone's like, I don't want to be an influencer. And it doesn't require, that's not what I'm talking about as much. We have the ability, whether you have 200 followers on Instagram or you have 200,000, you have something brands want, and that is high quality professional imagery.
Right.
And so you can really leverage that, and you don't have to leave your home. They'll send you the product. And if you want you charge, or you can exchange. Like if it's a high end, like if it's a $3,000 couch, there's times where I'm like, they don't have a budget to pay me on top of a $3,000 couch, but I needed a couch.
Right.
And so I'll take the couch to
Yeah,
photograph
yeah.
it for 10 minutes, you know? So working with brands is a huge one. There's a lot of different ways to work with brands, and partner with brands, or even affiliate income. That's an easy, like that's no extra work,
Yeah.
from our side of things, but it's something that can be really profitable, if done correctly in your business, and it's so easy. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of different ways through that people just don't know exist, and they can be really fun, even if you don't want to get into more like ads or whatever on Instagram, and you
Yeah.
don't want to. Because I know sometimes we're like, I don't, that's not me, and I get it, but that's not the only route. There's other ways to go about it without turning into that.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a fresh idea. We've not had this on the podcast before, this idea of working with brands. And, I love this that they'll send you products to be photographed because you've got all the equipment to do that. So is that something that, how did that come about in your business, working with brands?
So I started about 5 years ago, I think. And I just knew I loved Instagram. Like Instagram's my thing. I love the community that you can develop there, and also marketing purposes. It's just a great outlet if you build a trusting audience, like they're ready to buy when you're ready to sell.
Yeah.
So I love that. And then I really, again, it all came like when my kids, so 5 years ago, I was about to have twins. And so a lot of my focus on the business side of things was how can I, maximize my income without leaving my house as much for photo shoots, or have to be editing a lot or tied to my computer. And so I really started looking into working with brands. And then once we moved out of Texas to Kansas City, we bought a fixer upper. It was not,
Oh, wow.
we never, like we knew what we were getting, but we never like planned to do that. It was the only house available in the
Yeah.
neighborhood we wanted. And so I wanted to flip the house on my own and do it mostly on my own. And so then that's when I was like, okay, I can leverage my photography and videography skills working with brands. I can get paid
Wow.
to renovate my house. And it's
Amazing.
another just creative outlet, which I think for photographers, like we can get so burnt out. Like while we love what we do, and I think all of us are grateful for it, you still can get burnt out like very easily as creatives, and because we like to be doing different things a lot, and typically that's our personality type. And so working with brands is really a great creative outlet, because you can use, like when you partner with them, typically like the guidelines are not like all, you're not in a box. Like you get to use your creativity to shoot it and to market or whatever, however you want. And so I really loved being able to use that as my creative outlet.
That's amazing. I say, can you give us help for people who've never even considered this as a possibility? How do you approach brands to offer your service? You mentioned possibly even starting for free, I imagine, and just building trust and building relationship. But how did that work for you? How did you approach brands when you were doing this fixer upper house and you're thinking, okay, I think this could actually be beneficial for both of us, a mutually beneficial relationship for us? How did you actually approach brands about that?
Yes. So I talk about this really in depth in the course, but there's three ways basically to work with brands. And one, you pitch them directly, like, and there's a correct way to pitch. You pitch them. Two, as you grow, brands pitch you. So I'll have brands pitch me quite often. And then three, actually one of my favorite ways is you work through an agency. So there's like a middleman on your behalf that'll pair you up. And that I really love that way because it's really easy. And like they have like, this is what they pay. Here, apply for it. Do you want it? It's really easy. But when I was first starting, so when we moved in, I was like, okay, what was one of my first projects? Oh, like I did I converted one of our like entryway closets into a mudroom. And I was like, well, I'm going to try to pitch my local, it's kind of like Lowe's or Home Depot, but it's like for the like our section of the country. So I was like, I'm going to pitch them, just see, like, and if the worst that happens, they say no. I've never worked with a brand before, but we'll just see what happens. And I did it, and they were like totally on board. And so then for that one, all of them worked totally different. They basically sent me a gift card to cover anything I would need for the project. And then there's, quite a bit left over that I could get, tools and anything I would needed for other projects. So that's where it started. And I was like, that was amazing. And I did something that I loved, and it just kind of snowballed from there to me realizing, okay, I can start working with bigger brands and not only will they send the product, but they also pay for my time.
Wow.
So that's
And
how it
it's
started.
flexible to work around your two little ones as well, which is brilliant. When they're having nap time, quickly take your photos.
Yes. And then as they got older, like once they were 2.5, it became like, I know on Instagram a lot of people see, like they became part of my projects now. They love doing home projects now. And it was something they could be involved with my work. And they love it, especially if I partner with kid brands. Now, you partner with like a kid brand and you're getting kid products. Now they're like, mommy has the best job ever. We get all this free stuff. But it was just a fun thing that really got me and my kids. It was a bonding thing for us. And because photography, I couldn't edit with my kids, or like, especially when they're like 2 and 3, they don't care. But when you're like hammering and doing woodworking or whatever it is you decide to partner with, if it's an avenue that you're like, just get my kids involved, it was just a cool thing for us to be able to do together, and then also just get paid for it.
I love that. That's amazing. So we're kind of onto the topic now of doing DIY on your house. And you mentioned that's something you really love doing, and you talk a lot about on your Instagram, is women doing practical DIY projects around the house. So talk to me about how that started and what you love about it.
Yes. So when we moved here, I knew about tools and everything. My dad is just one of those people that can do anything. And so I kind of grew up watching him. If he needed something done, he would just do it. He would never call somebody. He would just build it or do it. And so that kind of got ingrained in my personality. And when we moved into this house, I mean, it was deemed unlivable. Like you couldn't live, and it was really bad. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. And again, my personality type is, I can do anything. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
If I mess it up, it's okay. Like no one's dying as long as I
love it.
I can fix anything if I screw it up the first time. So I just did it, and then I just found that I really, really enjoyed it, and just would go one project at a time and kept learning and more as I went. And I'm a huge researcher on anything and everything. So now we have the internet. Like I can Google how do I use this tool? What type of tool do I need to use for this? And then just over the years, it really just became a huge passion and something I love to do, and kept practicing with all different projects until I got to where like now I'm super comfortable, using any tool or anything like that. And I know a lot of women are always like, a lot of them won't even hang a picture in their house. They'll wait. They're like, I've been waiting 6 months for my husband to hang this picture. And I'm like, just hang the picture.
It's so funny.
You don't have to wait for them. And so it just, on Instagram especially, like I just love encouraging. There's so many, I think Instagram's such a beautiful community, because especially for stay-at-home work from home moms, because it can be a lonely world sometimes, especially if your kids are wee little and you can't really leave the house a whole lot. And so you build a community on there, and then they're wanting a hobby, especially the ones that don't work or something, like they're just wanting something for themselves. And I love just being able to encourage them, like, you can do this. Like taking off the baseboard on your wall, like your house isn't gonna like fall to the ground if you do it. So I love being to encourage women to, if they're wanting to do things, like just do it. You can do it. There's no reason to have to wait on your husband.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. And I ended up, because gosh, I think our lives are the same, because my dad also renovated a house that was condemned when I was younger, and it's similar to you. He just did it. He would just go, I'm going to build a garage. And we go, no, you can't. He's like, yes, I can. And he would just do it. And we're like, oh, look at that. He built a garage.
You did it.
Yeah, most of my childhood was carrying bricks and holding up bits of plasterboard, like just being involved with whatever creative project he was doing at the time. And so then we bought a house that was a complete fixer-upper. Like we had to dig down to the foundations, rewired central heating, new doors, skirting boards, everything. And similar to you, my husband walked in and he was going, it's a big job. It's a big job. And I was going, I think we can do it. That's fine. It's going to be good. Look at the size of the room. It's going to be wonderful. And then actually when we then got the keys to the house, because it was a repossession, our house, so it was moving very, very quickly. So we I think we viewed it and exchanged within 4 weeks on the house. It was incredibly quick because it was a repossession, but I'd only seen it the once. So when we now had the keys and I'm going into the house, I'm got my second viewing eyes on, which I didn't before, but we now own the house. And so I walked in and I was literally going, oh, what have we done? What have we done? Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, this is and interestingly, my husband, because I'm naturally positive, he's naturally more negative, and so he was the one going, "Oh, it's a big job, it's a big job," and I was going, "Oh, babe, we can make this."
And then you flipped.
We switched, and I was going, "Oh, I think we've made a terrible mistake. Like, this is all." And my husband was going, "Oh, it's not as bad as I remember. No, I think we can do it. I really think." And I'm going, "Are you sure?" And he's going, "Yeah, I think we can."
I love that. See, we were opposite.
Totally.
I never saw the house before my husband bought it because I couldn't come up from Dallas. I never saw it.
What?
I saw it like through FaceTime and pictures. He would like try to FaceTime me with it, but I never saw it in person. And because he was the one, and he's not a fixer-upper type of guy, but he was like, "Oh, Katie can do it. Like, Katie can fix it. She can do anything." And so he was really positive about me. And then whenever I he'd already bought it, and I get here and to see it, I'm like,
"Oh,
this is bad."
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, that's so funny because we were similar situation, but just my husband and I were opposite because I'm usually the negative one and he's the positive.
Oh, hilarious. You didn't have a chance because you were just on FaceTime. You just go, "Oh,
yeah." I was like, "Okay,
yeah,
I trust you. If you really think we can do it."
Apparently the house that because my parents renovated 2 houses. I think that's why I just thought, "Oh yeah, we can do it. Like, it'll be fine." Because my parents had renovated a massive house when I was a teenager and a house when I was a child too, like totally gutted and the house was so bad that when they moved in, my mum's brother took my dad aside and cornered him and said, "How dare you bring my pregnant sister to a house like this?"
Oh my goodness.
They were bad houses. So yeah, similar to you, I just went in going, "I'm just going to figure it out. We'll watch some YouTube videos. We'll figure it out." I learned how to use a miter saw, terrified I was going to cut my fingers off, but I didn't. And fitted all my skirting boards, which was an absolute nightmare because none of the walls were straight. So on the YouTube videos, they're just like, "Oh, you just push it against the wall." No, that's not how it works in our house, because you push it against the wall and it touches on the left and the right with a massive gap about this big in the middle. And you're like, "What am I supposed to do with that?" I had bags of cement just trying to push this against the wall and corking it, all kinds of stuff. And my husband laid all the laminate floor himself. And all the YouTube, this is where you do need to listen to the YouTube videos, because all the YouTube videos are saying you must buy the knee protectors. Now, my husband comes from a place called Yorkshire in the United Kingdom, and they have a reputation for being a bit cheap. And, and he was like, "I'm not spending £14 on a pair of knee protectors, like a bunch of wusses, I'll just do it." So he laid on the laminate floor. He had permanent problems with his knees for months afterwards, and we had to send him to a physio for £40 a pop every time. We were like, "Should have got the knee protectors."
Oh, that's hilarious.
Too funny. Anyway, hilariously for us, it turns out I don't like doing DIY. Not at all. Not a little bit. Never again. I told my husband I'm dying in this house. Like, this is my forever home. I'm never doing that again. But I just love that you are just embracing all the creative projects that there are in home development. And I suppose you're developing the skill, well, it sounds like you have it already, but you're just keeping it alive, that tenacity to figure it out, which actually translates very much into a photography business. We've been talking about that a lot today. There is a big part of just figuring it out when it comes to photography business, and people can give you advice about how they did it and what worked for them, and they can give you presets, but at the end of the day, you've got to just be prepared. This is going to be your journey. It's going to take some twists and turns that you didn't see coming, but if you can just enjoy the journey, it will be a lot more fun for you.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And making your business your own, that's the whole reason we go into business for ourselves, is to not work in the corporate world and have to be told how to do every little thing. Like, just because somebody does it one way, whether it's the photography side of things or the business side of things, that may not work for your business. And so everybody has to do it, what works for your personal life and your business life, of what's going to run your business to be successful and sustainable. And especially that sustainable one, because you can make something work for a year or two. Like when I was shooting weddings,
so true,
and doing as much as I was, there's no way that would have been sustainable long term. So always, making your business practices to be something sustainable, and what's sustainable for someone else won't be sustainable for me, and vice versa. So that's why I always, not getting advice and help from others, but also tailoring it to what works best for you.
Yes, which it sounds like you do with your one-to-one mentoring, just really help people to get specific about their business. So I think it's shopkatielamb.com. where people can
Correct.
go to find more information about your mentoring and your courses and your presets as well, which is absolutely gorgeous. So Katie, thank you so much for just being so honest and open and sharing your journey and your story with us. It's been fascinating.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again. It was an honor talking to you, and I love that you asked me to do this. I'm just honored to have been here.
Oh, you're so welcome.
If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find more interviews, tips and inspiration in the Love Light Fine Art community on Facebook. You can also follow along with each new episode on the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram. And don't forget to visit www.sarahjaneethan.co.uk/lovelight for information on training, real-life wedding workshops and online courses to develop your own fine art photography and connect with more of the clients you love.